Well, welcome back to Wrestling with Rahxephon, everyone. And here it is, as promised in the last video. This one will be covering the other sister, Shitow, Megumi. And while unfortunately overshadowed by her elder sister again, Megumi doesn't have any of the pitfalls that Haruka does. In fact, where Haruka is an immature disaster of a character teaching us bad morals by living in the past and not really doing anything with her life, Megumi is a pretty reasonable and generally practices good mental hygiene. For this reason, she's a good addition to the cast, although the reason she's in the list of problematic characters is because of her relevance to the plot. She has the exact opposite problem of her sister, where Haruka was a main character with very little development and very little to positively bestow to the viewer. Megumi could teach us a lot and has a relatively good amount of screen time, but doesn't really do anything for the plot. For some reason, Haruka's the center point of the plot, and Megumi is on the periphery the entire time. She has excellent character development, but almost no plot relevance. It's extremely odd to me that one of the characters that is one of the most developed, with some of the most notable growth and greatest scale of character development we see on screen, and with a good amount of screen time, is essentially tossed aside. Of all the entire cast, Megumi probably actually grows the most, but who cares, because she doesn't do anything plot relevant, or at least that's what the writers seem to think. And it must make me ask, what does she do? What is her overall relevance to the series? It just makes it seem like her entire character is kind of irrelevant and a drain on resources that could have gone elsewhere to desperately fix some of the other characters Rahxephon struggles with, or develop the plot, or just do something. I mean, as I've said before, Rahxephon goes too far in too many places, and it definitely feels like a series that stretches itself too thin way too early on, and the removal of a character with a lot of screen time could have helped that. But regardless, she teaches us a good lesson about moving on, which is unfortunately completely undone by her sister's escapades, but nonetheless, Megumi is an interesting character, not only for what she can teach us, but also the fact that the writers completely bungled how to use her. It's weird because her writing is not bungled at all, but her placement in the series is completely bungled, as again, she feels kind of tacked on. And to examine that, we're going to look at her place in the plot. Now, Megumi is introduced when Ayato arrives upon Raikanai, and she's basically set up as his kind of guide in the early episodes, or literally the first episode they meet, she serves as his guide, and the two don't get along very well at first because Megumi's kind of an outcast and naturally suspicious of outsiders, and Ayato is, well, aware of her less than friendly attitude in this scenario and feels similarly due to it. However, through a few experiences in the next 20 minutes, the two grow to understand each other and come to be amicable, if not friendly towards each other. Oh yeah, and Ayato also lives with her now because he lives with Uncle Ricto, who happens to be Megumi's grandfather, and Haruka's. As the series progresses, we just see Megumi more and more kind of just doing things. She's a member of the Terra Bridge staff, so she shows up every now and again, and there is about 15 seconds of plot about her promotion. She also does just serve as a general friend to Ayato early on, and as for her place in the rest of the plot, most of it just boils down to her liking various guys who are either dating other women or are not interested, and her getting over it. We first see this in the Christmas episode, where she wants to ask out Major Yagumo, and that gets torpedoed because, well, he's older and he's already dating someone. But she gets herself together, she moves on, and then as she grows more friendly with Ayato, and after her promotion to a full-blown member of the bridge staff, she calls to ask him out and confess her feelings to him. However, this is kind of undone by him running away back to Tokyo Jupiter to go find himself. He did this for his own reasons, so I'm not going to say it's rude, but it's unfortunate for her how he takes off literally right as she's about to tell him something. She gets over this too, as she accepts Haruka's claim on Ayato, and I know I criticize Haruka's writing a lot because it's horrible. However, Megumi basically backing off in a case where her romantic advances are rejected is the mature thing to do. You know, Megumi just says, okay, I get it, I hope everything's good, I'm gonna go do my own thing, which is the right thing to do, and again, completely overshadowed by her sister's horrible writing and whatnot. As the series nears an end, Megumi does probably the most plot significant thing, as while evacuating Raikanai, she basically tells Ayato how she feels, and accepts the fact that, you know what, he's probably not gonna take her, she should just move on. She says, Ayato, I thought you were kinda nice, but I can see that ship has sailed, go ahead and live your own life. Good luck, Haruka. And I guess this emboldens Haruka to then creepily hit on Ayato, and I guess that emboldens him to just go, okay. It is really weird that I think the most plot-relevant thing she does in this series is basically get out of Haruka's way, which I understand what they're going for here, but it doesn't work because it just reinforces Haruka's bad behavior. And while it does allow Megumi to teach us a valuable lesson, it does also make it feel like her character was thrown aside. While yeah, she does survive till the end of the series, and even makes a cameo in a phone call in the reset timeline, she doesn't really do that much past this point, and she doesn't really do much throughout the series, just being a generally pleasant supporting member of the cast, who has a few good comedy lines and scenes, but doesn't necessarily do anything super plot relevant, hence the short summary. Now getting to her strengths, Megumi's story is well done, and while I didn't go into her personal development a lot, I will here now. Megumi's personal development is basically all about accepting things out of your control and moving on. Now, in her case specifically, it has to do with romantic affections that are not returned. However, this could just be seen as like a specific scenario which this lesson applies to. The moral she teaches us is just generally the need to continue moving forward and to not mull over past regrets, which is refreshing that a younger member of the cast teaches this to us, and it is an interesting dichotomy compared to that of her sister, who's older than her and lives almost exclusively in her past. In addition, her character is also a relatively well done one about coming of age and dealing with setbacks in general. She's plucky and determined, but is also relatively stable and able to control herself, so that when she does suffer from setbacks and loneliness and some self-doubt, she's not completely devastated and she doesn't mill over it forever. Unlike others, she doesn't wallow almost all throughout the series. I mean, she cries a few times, but who doesn't? And it doesn't define her character. She moves past this, she moves through this, and instead always pushes forward. Yeah, she gets bummed out, but she doesn't fixate on it, and she doesn't fixate on things that she can't have, and she doesn't fixate on things that can't be changed, and she doesn't unduly blame others. She simply accepts the facts on the ground, and takes a little while to collect herself, and then moves on. She's very emotionally responsible, at least as far as the cast of the series goes, and knows how to handle emotions relatively well. In fact, while she does try to grow up too quickly, which is a common fault for a lot of people her age, she is also a rather good role model for any youth out there, as she's pretty responsible and reasonably expresses herself and accepts others doing so as well, to the point where she accepts things that do not necessarily play out to her favor, and the realities that are out of her control. For example, when she learns that Yagumo is taken and is already dating Kim, she doesn't let this interfere with her relationship with either. She stays professional with Yagumo, and she's still good friends with Kim. She doesn't feel betrayed, she doesn't blame anyone, she doesn't berate herself, she doesn't beat herself up or anything. No, she just kind of moves on further and says, well, it is what it is, but you know, I tried. And then she moves on. And in a series where the female lead is defined by living in the past, poor mental health hygiene, and excessively trying to change things which realistically can't be changed and wallowing in like self-doubt, it's very refreshing that there is a character who basically does the exact opposite. Unfortunately though, that person that does wallow a lot and does fixate on the past, i.e. Haruka, is one of the lead characters in the series, and as a result we start to get into the problematic part with Megumi, which is that she just kind of exists. Asking an honest question, why does she exist though? Now, I thought about this from both a meta standpoint and a sort of in-universe standpoint. Now, in-universe, you could argue that she is a supporting character, and she does do a few things that could be considered plot relevant. Just a few small supporting bit roles, and that part where she yells at Haruka, and I guess that pushes Haruka over the edge to finally tell Ayato how she feels. Megumi also does a few limited exposition things in regards to Haruka, however those are kind of cryptic and you kind of have to like pay attention to those. So I guess you could make argument that there is place for her as it is. From a writer's standpoint, I also considered some ideas, and what I think it is they wanted an additional female character in the cast just to try and create some romantic tension, be like, oh, who's Ayato gonna choose? Which woman is gonna get with him? Oh, they're all hitting on him, it's an anime, ha ha ha. That's what I feel like they tried to do, is early on the two are implied to be well together, and it seems like they're on the path to dating. And I guess if anyone's on Team Haruka, for some reason, that would make you go, oh no, what's gonna happen? I interpreted it as an artificial way of adding tension into the whole Haruka-Ayato dynamic. And since Megumi kind of exists to do this, I don't know why she's so well written, especially compared to Haruka. And it also makes her exit from the series feel a lot less magnanimous. It just feels like she's kind of pushed out once she served the purpose of kind of adding a little tension, and once it's obvious that, oh, Haruka is for some reason gonna be the one that wins the Ayato lottery. It is kind of sad because Megumi, again, is much more developed, and I understand that if she did get Ayato, that would kind of ruin her arc, or at least undo part of it. But at the same time, like, she just feels like she's kind of beat up on it, and it does feel like the writers didn't like this character or saw her as completely superfluous once the whole tension element was done with. If the arcs of both Megumi and Haruka were planned to be the way they were from the very start, which Haruka's does seem to be, then why even have Megumi exist and take away screen time from one of so many other characters and plot points that needed a lot more fleshing out? She doesn't really do anything Haruka couldn't have done or should have done with some minor tweaking. What I'm saying here is, it seems like the writers were like, okay, Haruka's the one, we're done with you, Megumi. Thanks for making this seem a little tense, please leave. Which is why I think she was added solely to try and drum up some tension, and why she's kind of discarded once that tension is done with. While Megumi is a role model and teaches us some great lessons, it still feels kind of pointless because this is undone by Haruka, teaching us a horrible lesson, and simply how Megumi is kind of discarded at the end of the series. Once she gives Haruka the whole confession speech, I guess, she kind of just exists. And, oh yeah, I forgot in the final episode, she says, Haruka, you gotta go win Ayato back one last time. So I guess she's kind of her sister's cheerleader, but not something that really needed to exist. Conversely, all of the time and stuff that Megumi does spend with Ayato reduces time that Haruka could have. And I know I hate the Haruka dynamic. I hate the Haruka x Ayato writing, but if more time was put into it, they could have done something with it, maybe, or taken it in a different direction that would have been better than the final product. But again, a lot of that can't be done because a lot of screen time is also given to Megumi in a vain attempt to create some kind of romantic tension that honestly the series just doesn't need. Like, you don't need to add all this extra tension to keep the viewer watching, or at least me. I was kind of confused a lot of the time, or at least interested in the plot, sort of, and the world building. So the romantic tension really didn't keep me watching. I didn't really care, because a lot of the characters in this series are kind of flat. So just artificially adding this tension didn't really do anything for me. And especially since Haruka, Ayato, and Megumi, neither of them extensively develop each other, or any other character for that reason. So why bother having Megumi here? Like, it's weird that she kind of exists in a vacuum too. She has great character development, but doesn't necessarily impact any other characters enough to really validate her presence. Either Megumi should be Ayato's age and the two should get together, as Haruka learns and teaches the viewers a valuable lesson about moving on. That's what I would have done. Or rewrite Haruka's character so she's younger, less creepy, and doesn't have a previous relationship with Ayato, and just have a more conventional romance story where the two go on adventures and have a lot more time bonding. Either way, Megumi's character would have to be drastically changed to really make sense in the writing standpoint for me, because she'd either have to be a lot more prevalent in the whole Haruka moving on version of the story, or non-existent at all. In fact, I think Haruka and Megumi should have been consolidated from the very start into a single character, or we should have just gone full tragedy here, and just nobody dates anyone, everyone dies, it sucks. I know people don't like series like that, but if Rahxephon got really dark, I'd respect it. It'd be crazy, you know? But as it stands, though, Rahxephon just kind of has like a weird, creepy romance with Haruka and Ayato, and Megumi's presence only serves to add a little bit of artificial tension to it and do a little bit of exposition on her sister, but not really anything more, or not really anything enough to validate Megumi's presence. It just feels like Megumi is simply added to create some kind of implied romantic tension, and then just cast off when this purpose is served. Since it does seem to me that Haruka x Ayato was one of the only things that was thought of and agreed on from the start, I'm confused why no one thought to give Megumi anything else to do, or anything relevant to do to the plot. Like, it seems to me that Haruka's role was kind of thought out, and Megumi's is a tertiary addition to that, but then they realized, crap, we made a character, what are we going to do with this character? She can't just go away, and so she kind of just tags along past this point. It seems to me that when she served the purpose given to her, no one really wanted anything to do with her, and since there's some mean-spirited handling of the character, as she's just kind of cast aside, and this accumulates with her basically renouncing her own feelings in a weird kind of character climax, I guess, where she hands over Ayato to Haruka, in essence. And this does accumulate an endearing, valuable, and hard-earned lesson, and a good lesson, but again, it, and basically Megumi as a whole, just get dumped on by both her sister and the entirety of the conclusion and a lot of the writing done. It's unfortunate that one of the characters with the best character development has almost no plot relevance, and as a result, has almost no impact.